today and to welcome Troy Lemaile-Stovall, who is CEO of TEDCO, to speak with the Building Better Regions members today. So for those of you who may not be familiar with TEDCO, TEDCO is Maryland's venture development organization, which works to foster inclusive entrepreneurial innovation ecosystems by identifying, investing in, and helping to grow technology companies in Maryland. We invited Troy to discuss TEDCO's work and experience trying to build inclusive entrepreneurial ecosystems, because I know many of you have initiatives to support entrepreneurial development in your regions and localities. So I'm just going to say a few words about Troy and then turn it over to him. Troy became CEO of TEDCO in 2020. He brings more than 25 years of experience in investment management, higher education management, information and communications technology, and management consulting. He has a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering, a master's in computer science, and an MBA from Harvard. So we're, again, very, very welcome to have you, Troy. Thank you very much. And I'll turn it over to you. And Pearl, can you bring up Troy's slides?
Great. Jennifer, thank you. Thank you all for having me. It's an honor to be here. Thank you, Jennifer, for the work that you've done, and which we'll talk about here in a minute here at TEDCO. And Jennifer did a great job of kind of introducing TEDCO. I'm gonna try to do three things, and obviously Jennifer, I think this is set up for them to ask me questions, which I'm hoping that's what this will be, more of a dialogue. If we have a few slides, but the goal for me has always been about learning from others. I've been to other states and learned from them, and welcome the opportunity to learn from you all today. So this is as much about me learning from you, what you're doing in your areas and what we can bring to Maryland. So as Jennifer said, you can go to the first slide. TEDCO is the state's venture capital arm. And so at the end of the day, what we do is we use venture capital tools. And there are really kind of three parts to TEDCO, and I'll talk about them in a minute, but we use venture capital tools in order to effectuate this mission that you see here about economic empowerment. And I think the word here that I really want to spoke on, and I think it's the point of this group today, is inclusive. That's an intentional. Actually, this is an updated mission statement that's about 3 years old now. To be intentional about inclusivity, our intentionality doesn't just stop here at our mission statement. We have 5 core values. We went and updated our 5 core values to make sure that they reflect our focus on inclusiveness and diversity. And by the way, for us, inclusiveness and diversity is both a demographic around racial and sociological areas, but it's also geographic. And so it's just as much as we want to talk about a Black person in urban Baltimore, we want to talk to a white person in Western Maryland. And so both of those things are important for us to think about as we think about inclusivity. And so if you go on to the next slide. So by the way, we just celebrated 25. The 25 years is a recent accomplishment, so we're very proud of that. This just gives you a sense of what we're trying to do. At the end of the day, the way I explain what we do at TEDCO, our goal at the end of the day is to identify, nurture, invest, and scale early stage technology and life sciences companies here in the state of Maryland. And we do that through a variety of portals. We do that working with our universities. We do that working with our federal labs and our federal resources here in the state of Maryland. And we do that through the traditional entrepreneurial ecosystem. And we do it in a way that's supportive, elevates their stories and the like. And so you'll hear me, I grew up Catholic, but I was surrounded by a Baptist minister. So I talk, Jennifer, in alliterations, as Jennifer knows. And so what we talk about here is the 4 S's. And the whole point of what we want to do is the 4 S's. And so the 4 S's are this. And you can go ahead and transition to the next slide as I go over the 4 S's. But the 4 S's, the first one is about scaling. We in Maryland believe that we got to scale differently. I like to say colloquially, we got to add a 0 to it. Well, We're doing $100 million, that needs to be $1 billion. When we're doing $1 billion, it needs to be 10 billion. We've got to add a zero to the things that we do. We've got to scale, because frankly, we're competing, comparing ourselves to many of your areas and many of your regions. But more importantly, as a country, we're competing against places like China. And so we have to scale differently. And that leads me to the second S, which is stitching. If you don't know, the state of Maryland is about 6 million people. And so I grew up in Houston, Texas. That's about the size of the metropolitan area of Houston, Texas. So it's not that big from a size. And even from a state, again, Texas, it takes you basically a day to drive to go from one end of Texas to another. In one day, I can go the whole state of Maryland. And so, but we have an amazing capacity on a per capita basis, but we've not been working together in a way. So stitching, and by higher level of stitching, we can scale better. And so if we scale better and we stitch better, we can storytell better. And if we storytell better, we can get access to more resources. And those resources allow us to scale better, stitch better, and storytell better. But I said there are 4 S's. And that fourth S is we can create a higher level of stickiness, which we can measure. We can create a higher level of stickiness of those companies that are started, stay, and scale in Maryland. And so how do we do that? And that leads me to this slide here. In the next few slides, we have this ecosystem. We support both the entrepreneurs and the ecosystem. Our goal is to make sure entrepreneurs know how to talk about their opportunities, how to turn those ideas into concepts, how to turn those concepts into businesses, how to turn those startup businesses into scalable enterprises, and how to then go out and get the investment dollars. And so we have a range of things beyond our investment tools. And so you see just some of them here that allow us to really incubate and surround that entrepreneur with all the resources. And one, if you go to the next slide, excuse me, this slide really gives you an idea. I mentioned the different parts of TEDCO. I love this slide, and I usually talk exclusively from this slide, because this gives you a sense of, I mentioned before, those various portals, the federal labs, the colleges, the university labs, and the corporate. And so what you see, I'm an old engineer, so you see along the x-axis there, the various stages of investment dollars that we're making, even if we call them grants. So we're trying to move stuff from out of those labs through grants into our pre-seed, seed, Series A, seed and stage funds. And then along the y-axis, you see that dividing line where we're moving from research, where it's either in a university or federal lab, and we're translating that research, or sometimes it's called tech transfer, that into making into a corporation. So we have a range of programs. You see them here listed: Maryland Innovation Initiative, which works directly with our 5 research institutions, being College Park, Maryland College Park, University of Maryland, Baltimore County, University of Maryland, Baltimore, Johns Hopkins, and then Morgan State, which is an HBCU. And we also have the stem cell research, which is exactly like it sounds. They're investing in stem cell research that's literally taking stuff out of the labs and actually effectuating everything from diabetes to cancer to sickle cell to dementia. So it's an amazing set of programs that we have there. But as you continue to move from left to right, we have federal programs. Maryland has more federal labs than any other state in the union. But like I said before about the stitching, we've not stitched them together. And so that's what we're aggressively doing now. You see the RBI and UBI. Those are our efforts in our rural for the R and the U for our urban areas. We actually have individuals who are planted in those ecosystems geographically in our rural and urban areas to make sure those local ecosystems are stitched together and brought together for the aid of that entrepreneur. And we actually have funds available to help bring concepts to stage. And we're going to be launching here, not just that pre-seed fund, but a concept fund. Well, we know there's a lot of entrepreneurs that don't have access to that $25,000, $30,000 of funds, particularly people of color and women. So we're going to launch a concept fund that's going to allow them to take that idea and turn it into a concept. It'll be non-dilutive. It'll be, right now we're calling it a convertible grant. Again, if they get a funding round from us or someone else, that money would convert at some favorable, frankly, ratio to them. If it doesn't, it becomes a grant. We go have a drink and say, try something else. Try something else. We then move to our social impact funds. They sound just like they are. We recognize that not everything is going to move its way to a traditional stage investment. And so we know that, again, we are technology agnostic, but it has to have a technology piece to it. And so what we are doing with our pre-seed social impact funds is taking ideas that will impact the community, drive jobs, drive real change in the community. We talk a lot about that. We use the word underserved for us, Jennifer, and we talk about both underserved communities, underserved markets, and underserved founders. So for me, an underserved market, I talk about when I see an abandoned building in Baltimore, I don't see an abandoned building. I see the opportunity to put an urban garden with hydroponics and aquaponics to serve a food desert. If Yeah, I can talk about the demographics. I'll sit in a minute. If you look at underserved markets, I talk about Black women's hair care being a multi-billion-dollar, highly fragmented market that has no venture capitalists in it, but has life sciences, biology, and package and consumer goods. But there's nobody in it, and there's obviously underserved founders. So on your point, on the question, I think I just saw. Very proud to say, traditionally across the country, about 2% of venture capital goes to people of color and women. At TEDCO, through the work of both our seed funds and our venture funds, I've been here about a little over 3 years now. We've done maybe about 100 or so deals. More than half of those deals have gone to someone of color or woman. And we've done about $70, $80 million, and almost 60% of that money has gone to someone of color and women. So we're very proud of these stats, and we know we're outpacing the national average, but there's an intentionality to that. And we believe it's an and function, that you can invest in those who have been underserved, as well as invest in those things that come out of our traditional sources, like a university, like a Johns Hopkins or Maryland College Park. So our investment funds allow, and I'll close on this page, go anywhere from about $100,000 with the social impact funds, all the way through $2.5 to $3 million with our venture funds. And our returns are a top of market, as opposed to IRR, ratio ROIC, which is a traditional metric. But because of the risk that we take on and the early stage we take on, we tend to use a metric called TVIP, total value paid in capital. And so anything above 1 is you got your money back. And a 1.4 to 1.5 is considered best in class. We are at about 1.3. So not only are we doing this, we are also getting great returns. And lastly, on this page, we go to the next one after this one, Pearl, my next comment. And it's not a goal that we have, but we're and I think Tammy's online. She can give me if I get this wrong. We're not like the number 3 in terms of volume, deal volume on the East Coast, and I think in the country we're top 40. But that's not a goal we shoot for. It's just a function of what we do and how we do it. So you can go to the next slide. So thank you. And so cultivate. So allow me to tell a little bit of a story. So again, TEDCO's been around for about 25 years. And we get most of our funding, almost all of our funding comes from the state legislator and the governor. We have about a $60 million budget. We have about $250 million of assets under management on our balance sheet. And I talked about the different funds that we have. So the 2 sessions ago, the Speaker of the House and the Senate President added into the budget language at the end of not this past season, but back in 22, asked TEDCO to look at the state of Maryland and its competitive posture around technology and life sciences, and ask the following questions. How do we think differently, and how do we ensure Maryland can become a top 5 state competitively over the next 10 to 15 years? How do we think about the funding modalities of public and private partnership? How do we think about the participation of those who've not traditionally participated? And how do we think about, wealth creation in those communities? And so they asked us to do a study around this, and they asked us to do that study and come back to them in a very short time frame and ask for $500 million over 10 years to fund what at that time was called the Equitech Growth Fund. So we went off and hired a little group called RTI to come and do this study for us. And but we recognize this, and I'm going to show you a little video here. They did a great job. But I think one of the many key takeaways from that study was that Maryland is not growing anywhere near the national average that we should be growing at, and that the participation rate of people of color and women are going to, in some cases, take decades, plural, to get to some level of attainment. And so that to move forward, we have to think foundationally differently about the economic strategy of the state, not the least of which looking at things like manufacturing and other competitive posturing things. And so we were able to bring this to the state. We didn't ask for the 500, we asked for the 250 over 5. We didn't get the 250, but we did get 3 million this current year, and 5 million for the next 9 years, starting next year, but with the promise to come back, and we are coming back with a big ask. So I think I want to show you a really cool, and I think Tammy Thomas is on the line. Tammy leads our marketing and development efforts with a great team. All the social media stuff you see comes from her team. And so through the work that RTI did, and by the way, if you want to see the full report and see the coalition of the willing that we built behind this, as well as a bunch of other real good data, you can go to TEDCO Cultivate. If you Google TEDCO Cultivate, you'll see that. And we came up with Cultivate as the umbrella effort that it captures Equitech and a number. We recognize there's got to be a lot of different tools to make this happen. So Cultivate is the larger umbrella. Cultivate is just like it says, we've got to cultivate the soil, that being the fertile ground of Maryland, and with these various tools that are called Equitech. With that, I think we want to show a cool little cartoon animation that we have.
So let me unmute and get this to play. Oh, it's not because I'm sharing.
Of course.
Get it. So sorry. It was working for me and then it decided not to. Okay, awesome.
Make sure I got the questions answered. If I have questions. Justin, did I answer your question while we're waiting? Did Justin, did they get to answer your question?
Yeah, this is great. This is very impressive. Thank you for sharing.
Apologies, it's my computer. So sorry, give me 2 seconds.
I knew that was going to happen.
I swear I tested it right before this. I promise. I got on early to test it. But yeah,
so,
if people have questions for Troy while I'm getting this to work.
Yeah, while she's doing that. So let me tell you what we are right now with it. So again, it was very well received. Again, I can't thank Jennifer and her team enough. It was extremely well received study. It's being requoted and repurposed and reused throughout the state. It's very clear that the governor now, because of this and some other work, is very much focused on how does he think about an economic North Star, and how does he think about how to rethink frankly, what I call the structure of the various entities that we have here in the state of Maryland that are all focused on different elements of this. And I also think, again, if you go to the Coalition of the Willing, what we were able to is a strong connective tissue of both corporate, philanthropic, and even political leaders who all said, now's our time. Now we have to do this, and we have to think differently about what we're doing. It's even gone as far as to have us, TEDCO, as mentioned, we're 25 years old. We are technically a quasi-public entity of the state of Maryland. What that means, here we go. Think you got it, Pearl?
I think so. It just played for me. So.
Is there audio?
Sound. There is.
Can y'all not hear it? Can you hear me?
No.
Speaking? Oh, weird. Would it was doing it.
Do you want to pull it up in the browser link that I sent you on YouTube?
I will do that.
Do it that way.
Apologies.
So what we're doing, we've got a commission of about 30 to 40 people made up of a lot of corporate and philanthropic leaders. But we also recognize, because we looked at states like Massachusetts, that the 250 to 500 million is just the start. What we have to do is go out and find those monies from the philanthropic and the corporate world to get to that $1 billion. And so I think part of this issue is, as a state, we've always had this notion that the state had to lead the investment strategy. What we're trying to get the state to see is, no, our Maryland corporate partners have to be the one to lead, and the state has to follow. And so that's actually a big shift in mindset for us here in Maryland. And I think, again, thanking Jennifer and the team for to think that we've got to think differently if we really want to get to that 4%. I didn't say the number. To get to that 4% economic growth, we're at 1.6, which again is not even half of the average. So to get best in class, we're not even half of the average. So we've got a ways to go, and we think part of that ways to go is to rethink both the strategy and who participates and who leads, as well as thinking about the workforce development piece of this as well. And here we go.
All right, we're going to try this again. It should work. I apologize for the technical difficulties, everybody, but let me know if you can't hear it. No?
Can't hear it.
Okay. I will send the link in the chat. I'm so sorry, Troy. This was working when Jen and I tested it this week. They were able to hear it. I will share the link in the chat to the video. We may not be able to share it today. Again, I apologize to everybody, and I will send it out.
Can I share screen and then I can?
Yeah. So
Okay,
let's share sound on. Wait, Janine has a solution. Thank you, Janine.
Oh, good.
All right. So select share on the toolbar. Where is the toolbar? I will do a new share. I will share it again. Share sound. I got it. Janine, you're a hero and I greatly appreciate you. And I swear I've done this before, folks. I'm so sorry. Okay, it should work now.
What would happen if a state didn't prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the infrastructure to support innovation? Once thriving businesses would struggle, storefronts would be empty, job losses would mount, industries would falter, and a mass exodus of talented individuals would flee to competing states that offer more attractive opportunities to both businesses and workers. Maryland was once a top 10 fastest growing state, but it slipped from its ranking. While the state's economy had been growing steadily, the growth rate of STEM jobs has slowed. Countless Black and Hispanic Marylanders have grown disheartened at the thought of having to wait decades or even centuries to achieve representational parity in STEM jobs. The result is many of our talented, innovative minds are looking to other states for employment, allowing Maryland's innovation, technology, and science industries to fall behind. To avoid missing out on the innovation and growth that a diverse workforce can bring, we must act now. Let's take a trip into the future. It's the year 2040, and thanks to a visionary $500 million investment for the Cultivate Maryland strategy 10 years ago, Maryland is now the shining hub of groundbreaking technological advancement and an epicenter of economic growth. Here's how an investment in research and development, education and workforce development, favorable government policies, and a supportive business environment move Maryland from the 28th spot in the country for high-tech growth into the top 15. A decade ago, we imagined a workforce that was truly representative of our state's diverse population. And today, we've achieved that goal. Black-owned employer firms now make up 14% of our state's businesses, while Hispanic employer firms have reversed their previous decline. But that's not all. Women-owned employer firms, regardless of race or ethnicity, have grown to 35%. This is a testament to the state's commitment to promoting gender equality and empowering women entrepreneurs to pursue their dreams. By creating an inclusive innovation ecosystem, we closed the STEM diversity gap, producing over 100,000 new high-tech jobs in emerging sectors like biotech manufacturing, medical device manufacturing, and software. Today, we can proudly say that Black Marylanders have increased their share of tech jobs to 34% and science and engineering jobs to 19%. Hispanic Marylanders have achieved parity in tech jobs and science jobs and increased their share of engineering jobs to 9%. Women, regardless of race and ethnicity, have increased their share of tech jobs to 32% and engineering jobs to 27%, while continuing to exceed parity in science jobs. This is the Maryland we envision. Join us in the effort to create a more promising tomorrow for our state. Your investment can help Maryland secure a better future, build stronger communities, foster collaboration, and create a sense of belonging for its residents. It's time to cultivate Maryland.
Thank you. All's well at the end of it. Yep. We don't need to repeat. Now I want to keep playing. Now I want to keep playing. Now I just want to keep on playing. Now I want to keep on playing. What do you know?
I know.
And now we're going to do a TEDCO talk. Of course, we'll do a TEDCO talk. Of course we do. One thing I failed to mention, again, I'll take whatever questions, and Tammy can fill anything I've missed. It mentioned about Black women. I should have mentioned, and one of the efforts we're extremely proud of is we found, before I started, there was a work already being done by the female chair that hired me, and the previous interim chair, a woman named Linda Singh. Linda is a very well-known person here in Maryland. She's a Black, she's a general who was the first Black woman, the first woman and Black woman to lead the National Guard here in Maryland. She was my predecessor as the interim. And she and Myra Norton, who was a chair at that time, had started a women's effort looking at how do we do a better job of helping women entrepreneurs, all women entrepreneurs, have a community, have the ability to communicate to themselves and with themselves, and gain better skills about how to navigate this thing called startup enterprises. And as we got in, and Lynn and I were talking about launching it, one of the things that became clear in the conversation is that Black women entrepreneurs face same but very distinctly different challenges in what they're going through. And so through that, we formed another program called our Black Women's Effort that we've done in collaboration with our 4 HBCUs here in Maryland. If you don't know, they are Bowie State, Coppin State, I mentioned Morgan State earlier, and the University of Maryland at Eastern Shore. And we've been very excited. Actually, we have a board meeting. Coming up next week, I think next week. And so very excited about the work that we do with our HBCUs. We've already had a couple of cohorts. So we just had a graduation ceremony, 2 graduation ceremonies, Tammy, a month or so ago. Very excited. And on top of all of that, we just were recently awarded a $400,000 federal earmark because of our senators, Cardin and Van Hollen, in the last budget cycle. We were able to get that, and we've gotten other sponsorship levels from some local philanthropists as well in Maryland. So we're really excited about the women's effort. Our general women's that we've formed a separate 501c3 for it, and we really do see that being part of the impetus of how we're going to do some of the numbers that were talked about in the animation that you just saw. So with that, I won't call them prepared because as Tammy knows, I'm never prepared. I just kind of go on the fly when I speak. But that's all I kind of want to chat about, but I'll take any questions. And I think there's a couple of things in the chat, or Tammy can bring up anything that I may have forgotten. There's a lot of links Tammy's putting in there to the Cultivate and to the women's efforts. Let's see, Justin asked, are you able to share the percentage of Black, Latino women in ownership companies in the Black biotech vertical? That's an outstanding question. We looked into this, Justin, and it's hard numbers to have. So I don't have them. Let me answer your question. I don't have them. They're hard numbers to get, but I can tell you when I look at our portfolio, I told you we're tech agnostic, but I'd say about 30% of our deals are in the bio life sciences field, med devices. I want to highlight we have 2 Black women who have med device companies in our portfolio. These are med devices companies. And so I'm very proud of those particular women. When I think of that whole portfolio though, I say it's probably less than 5% of that portfolio is of women and the like. And so yeah. And is the number of the video specific to tech companies, tech and life sciences. It's tech and life sciences. And so I think they said a couple of things. They said STEM a couple of times. So STEM is just a broader thing. So STEM is inclusive of that. Tammy talked about the women's program. Yep. Yep. Baseline. Yep. And we're going to share the link. Yep. So I think that's everything in the chat. So Jennifer, any questions I'll take of anyone else? Look, I'll say this. Look, this is I don't have to say this, but you all know this. This is uh, the word is intentional. You have to be intentional about this. This isn't just going to happen because you'd like it to happen or you feel. But let me on that point. Let me say something that I'll say it. I think and I'm not trying to bring politics in this. It's not my point, but I actually believe that there is an existential threat to this work, and an existential threat. I know the folks in Atlanta, the Fearless Funds. These are ladies who started a fund, and I know several of the ladies, and one of the ladies is married to a very dear friend of mine. And I was talking to him just last week, and he was just telling me the big legal check that they're going to have to write to defend themselves against this. For those that don't know, Fearless Funds is a fund that's focused on Black female entrepreneurs. They're being sued by the same group that brought the lawsuit against the universities about affirmative action. And so this same group is going after actually a number of law firms. A number of law firms have scrapped their diversity programs because of the suits that are coming. This is an existential threat because what happened is my friend I just mentioned that's married to one of the founders told me, he said, Troy, in many ways he's won because A, I've got to spend a crap load of money. B, if you don't know, SBA has paused their 8A certifications. And a number of investors who were looking at this asset allocation in terms of they are no longer they're freezing that funding. And so I'm not going to say that he's won he's maybe won this battle, but we still got a war to fight, folks. And this, I hate using those. I don't use those type of analogies, but I think that's the best one I have for right now. This is not going to be an easy fight, but it's one that we have to fight. But I do believe that is an existential threat that is facing the work that I know we're doing here in Maryland at TEDCO now, and I believe many of you are doing in your regions.
Thank you, Troy. Troy, Janine has a question. Janine, do you want to just ask your question to Troy?
Sure. Thanks so much for, I love this presentation, your energy, your knowledge, your expertise. This is fantastic. I literally just started my position with the cohort in Detroit on Monday. And I've been doing some digging around and some work that's been done. And this actually came from a design thinking session that was done. But there was a statement that bubbled up from the data that said participants' responses are largely either focused on the impact for businesses and the economy or on impact for the wider population, including historically excluded communities. There is an opportunity to investigate and communicate the relationship between these constituencies. You said something earlier, and I didn't catch it. You said it, but I'd love your thoughts on it. Thanks.
Yeah, well, you open up. If I really could go on a soapbox, and that last thing I talked about, the existential threat, I'm really about to do a soapbox on this one. I think a couple of things in my response to this. One is like the story is the trick question that I tell Jenny. Here's the trick question I tell folks here in Maryland. The trick question is this: two scenarios. Scenario one: company in California post a job, hire somebody out of Maryland, they stay in Maryland to do the job for the company in California. Scenario two: Maryland company post a job, hire somebody in California to do the job, but they stay in California. The trick question: what's the traditional definition of job growth for the state of Maryland? Answer: neither and both. The reason I use that trick question is our metrics that we use to determine success, Janine, are flawed. Either they are fundamentally flawed or they're not telling us the whole truth. I think we as practitioners, and I know we're leading this here in Maryland. I just had this conversation with one of our groups out there. We think this notion that this number that we use of job growth is necessarily the right metric to use. I don't pretend I know the right ones, but I know when I look at the portfolio of companies in TEDCO, the average size of them is 2.5. 2.5. So why hold me accountable for job growth when I got 2.5 companies, when I got 2.5 employees per company? Why? I think better, and I'm not saying to be not held accountable to something, but to be held accountable to a job is, I think I'm gonna come to the community piece in a second. So I think some better metric, I'm not sure these is all, is are we attracting and retaining talent that but for would leave or not come to the state? Are we bringing capital to the state that but for would not come to the state of Maryland or would flee the state of Maryland? So I think that's one set of conversations we have to have, Janine. I think the other one is around community impact. I mentioned our pre-seed social impact funds, and I didn't really do a good job of talking about how we think about that. We think about that in terms of not whether they're going to, because the way, frankly, the TEDCO's flywheel basis, we put like a venture capitalist, we put $1 in at an early stage at a great valuation, and we get it out at a later stage and a better valuation. I mean, that literally is our flywheel. But we recognize there's some companies that may not ever be attractive to a traditional venture fund, but they will be great technologies in their communities, paying great wages, maybe at $3, $4, $5 million. Maybe they pay us back 1x. I will tell you this, Janine, I will celebrate that 1x return with the same vigor as the 18x that we got just a month or two ago on something that we got a great return on. Same, because the impact is so much greater for that community to get that 3. I think the last thing I'll say, again, because I talk in analogies, that's just me, and I know people get tired of my analogies, but it's the only way I can talk. I think for us, we have to rethink what technology is in these communities and the impact it can have. So many of our entrepreneurs are service-based businesses. We fundamentally believe at TEDCO that any company can be a service-based company. And so the analogy that I use is I tell people if you don't remember the Jeffersons, go back to YouTube and check out George and Louise. But if George and Louise come back and start a dry cleaning business that has technologies that clean clothes better, faster, cheaper, or deliver them some Uber-like fashion, I want to be able to ask ourselves at TEDCO, is George and Wheezy tech entrepreneurs who just happen to be in the dry cleaning business, or they dry cleaning entrepreneurs that are using technology to fundamentally change the dry cleaning business? We all have to help our entrepreneurs fundamentally change their business model, because what technology does, Janine, it helps you either defend your product or service better, it helps you price it in a fundamentally different way, or create a different level of customer service in a way that gives you a competitive advantage. And that's the conversation we have, and that's how we create entrepreneurs, because just being a restaurant or retail, that doesn't give you scale. What technology does, it gives you scale, it gives you the ability to change the fundamental economics of your business and get to an economic model that really grows. And the last thing I'll say on this, and this sometimes does get me into trouble, we got to stop being happy. And Tammy knows I talk about it. We got to stop being happy when we talk about, and I know I just said this 2 minutes ago, with a $5 or $10 million company. You know what? We need to be growing $100 million companies and $1 billion revenue Black-owned and brown-owned companies. That needs to be the goal. Shouldn't be the goal to create $5, $10 million companies. We should be, how do we create $1 billion revenue companies? And out of that, they can help support a couple of $100 million companies. And those $100 million companies can help support the $10 million. We got it backwards. We need to be talking, how do we start to create $1 billion revenue companies? That's what we need to have the conversation about. When I go look at the Black enterprise top companies in the country, you look at it, after you get past Dave's computer company and Robert Smith's company and Oprah's, the next biggest companies on the BE100 are a couple of $100 million. These are the biggest Black-owned companies. That shouldn't be the case in 2023. I'm sorry, Gene, I told you I would get on the soapbox. So let me get